Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 9th round of the Division 2 season, and it's taking place in the heart of the Ardennes Forest at the infamous Circuit des Spa-Francorchamps here in Belgium. And let me be honest, it's going to be a wet and heavy one tonight, but one lucky contender can become the 5th different winner in 5 Belgian Grand Prix here in Division 2 as the grid looks to tame the 7-kilometer circuit and its 19 corners. 2 DRS zones, which won't really be in effect tonight, heading into La Source and then down the Kemmel Straight should amount to many overtakes. And it's a track with beautiful scenery, even better racing, and of course the weather, like it will be tonight, is always a factor. There really is no place like Spa. But before we can begin, let's take a look at our starting grid for the Belgian Grand Prix. It is Ariel Tebrum on pole, over VTEC 87 in second for the Red Bull team, Matt Rossi in third, Helgeland in fourth, PWR Grim Reaper in fifth, Nicky 64 in sixth, Posh Josh 7th, Houdini 8th, Jay Cast in 9th, 10th Adel Tony in 11th, Bobbert Yates, 12th is Villeneuve, 13th is Jorday, 14th is Capital 58, 15th Hightower, and rounding out the grid is Josh Sr. in 16th. Going to be a very interesting race session, lots of fluctuation in pace, and oh boy, that rain's coming down. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's raining cats and dogs, it's raining buckets, insert metaphor here. If you're a fan of Carnage, you might just enjoy this showing here in Division 2, Round 9 of Season 8. We'd like to remind you one more time, Midwest F1 sponsored by Raze Energy, Epos Audio, and Sim Racer Coin. So, the weather today looks like this. It'll start full wets, as you can see. It looks like we are going to have a dry period somewhere about midway through this Grand Prix, and it will transition back to eventually the full wets one more time come the end of the race. So, we will see, I would have to assume, at least a couple of pit stops here today. As you can see, everybody on the full wets. It is pouring here in Spa. So, just for context here, these full wet tires will last you between 12 and 20 laps, so really good in a number of circumstances. Look at Tebrum is nearly just crashing the car, God almighty. But this is one thing I did want to point out that we did see in the qualifying session. The fluctuation in pace through some of the cars is absolutely ridiculous. We saw, actually, I believe it was CPI Tebrum, sorry, not CPI, REL Tebrum, who we're along with now. Of course, the qualifying session was in the dry, but we saw his pace at the end of the Kemmel Straight here reach about 345 kilometers an hour, whilst cars like Helgeland and perhaps a couple of others, as there's Grim Reaper, bit of a spin there, going through Lacombe. That's on the formation lap as well. That one has not gone well at all. But as I was saying, we've seen a lot of pace fluctuation in these cars. Tebrum hit 345. Some cars, perhaps in the midfield, were struggling to get above 325. So, give or take, a range of 20 kilometers an hour difference among the grid. But you have to believe that those that were slower on the straight lines have attacked on the downforce and are ready for the rain, whereas cars like CPI Tebrum figured, hey, I want to get on pole. Let's see what I can do with perhaps a car more suited for the dry and more suited for the high speeds. So, this is going to be a really interesting tightrope to walk for this Mercedes driver, and I'd have to assume anybody within the top 5. Matt Rossi was on a really good qualifying effort on the final lap, but unfortunately he invalidated his effort through the double left-hand corner lap. I think that probably could have put him on pole if he finished it out, but Matt Rossi, nonetheless, a skilled driver, he'll get back there for sure. Let's quickly take a look at our drivers and constructors standings. So VTEC leading driver standings. Of course, there's been a lot of moves taking place. VTEC is leading it. But it has to be said, the battle for that third promotion spot, in fact, both promotion spots, that race absolutely wide open, and there's no telling who's going to come away with it. Houdini in second, 472, Front Runner 464, Guitar Man 457, Nicky 64, 455, Matt Rossi 446. Lots and lots of potential. As Matt Rossi spinning it out of the last corner there. Lots of potential for an absolute barn burner finish to this season. Quickly, let's then look at the constructor standings. Aston Martin really beginning to run away with this one, 941 to Red Bull's 894, Mercedes 892, AlphaTauri 879, and Williams 877. So much potential for some new faces to take the lead of the championship here. as the lights are beginning to turn on here in Spa. Get ready, ladies and gentlemen. Hold on to your hats. It's a wet one. Jorday, drive-through penalty for jumping the start, but they are off into the first corner. It looks like T-Brum's got the better start down into the corner. Is he going to be able to hold off the cars, which I am sure are diving down to the inside, looking behind him? The Haas of Helgeland's gone wide. He had a great start there. It looks like Matt Rosie's actually gotten away the best. Somehow have missed that move into the corner. I sincerely apologize. Big collection of cars here towards the middle. It's going to be side by side, perhaps, through Rouge in the full wets. There's no way. You can see the Mercedes there of Houdini as almost, well, I say almost, he absolutely has cut the entirety of the corner. Better be safe than sorry, really. Rather take a track limits penalty than retiring the race. I have to say, that's honestly not a bad idea in the wet conditions. So T-Brum has been taken off the line by Matt Rosie. That's a big slide for Matt Rosie. T-Brum is going to look around the left-hand side, and he'll get it. Thankfully for Matt Rosie, he's not fallen out that much. But speaking of falling out, here's Posh Josh down to the inside, battling with Grim Reaper. Grim Reaper's gone wide. It looks like the Alfa Romeo of Capital 58 has gone wide back there as well. Somehow, some way, we've had no deaths on this opening lap. Grim Reaper's gone really wide. Has he perhaps gotten tapped from behind by the Red Bull? It was interesting to see because he could do nothing to avoid the slide that he was going through. That one, I'm sure, could be looked at after the session. Posh Josh in 6th. It looks like 6/10 of a second for the lead of the Grand Prix. T-Brum has regained it after Matt Rosie's mistake. Although, here's Bobbert Yates. It looks like we've got cars really side by side now. Or maybe not. Maybe the timing is just not working. I'm going to point to the second one and say that one's correct. It looks like, oh, and that's Grim Reaper off again, as it looks like as perhaps Jorday had an incident as well. He's gone a little bit wide. He's lost the position to Villeneuve. Bobbert Yates and Posh Josh trading about 6th position here. Posh Josh reserving up this week for Ferrari. This is a driver to definitely keep an eye on. He's gone quite wide of Blanchimont there, and he's now beginning to fall behind of Bobbert Yates. Not something he was looking to do. The two Alfa Romeos in hot pursuit of each other now. Within 0.2 of a second are the Italians here. And they've also got Houdini. Oh, and that's J-Cast who spun it out there. I don't think any contact was made. I think it was pure error on J-Cast's part. But still, nonetheless, that one's got to be devastating for him, as Adaltonian's going to look around the left-hand side, perhaps on a move for Capital 58 here. Who's going to get the better acceleration out of La Source? It's going to be Capital 58. Gets away, and is getting away quite well now. One hell of an opening first lap here, as Bobbert Yates starting to chase down Helgeland and the Haas, who has moved down from 4th, down into 5th. Bobbert Yates up 5 spots on the start, looking like it's going to be a good Grand Prix for him and that Williams team. Hopefully it stays that way. Matt Rosie in 2nd, Bobbert Yates in 6th. Not bad at all. And speaking of Matt Rosie, he has fallen behind that of T-Brum by 1.5 seconds already. That car, definitely quick, but how much of a handle on it does T-Brum have? Remember, he was one of those drivers that we saw had some of the highest top speeds in the qualifying session in the dry, but is he struggling in the wet? It doesn't seem like he is. J-Cast within 0.5 of a second on Adaltonian here. Again, it's really going to be a day where whoever makes the least amount of mistakes is going to come out on top, and I think at the moment T-Brum's going to have that trophy all to himself. Posh Josh within 0.6 of Bobbert Yates, who's starting to close down on Helgeland. It looks like, oh, I think J-Cast has had a spin there. Well, he's gotten the car back up to back in his grips now, but he definitely has spun out of position. I think he's lost it to both Villeneuve and Josh Sr. Yes, he has. I'd have to believe that was going through the double left-hander of Pouan. 0.7 of a second for Bobbert Yates back to the Haas of Helgeland. Using that battery, which it has to be said, is he going to be, as T-Brum sets the fastest lap naturally as you would, Bobbert Yates, I mean, that's probably where he's getting the pace from. Let's check the battery percentage of the cars ahead. Nearly all of them above at least 80%. Bobbert Yates seems to be using his most generously here, down to 60%. He's not afraid of the wet. He wants to go fast. And here's Capital 58. Houdini, I think, has actually covered that line. Nicely done. I thought he was going to go quite wide on exit of La Source, but now he's got Capital 58 in his wake. And I say wake, it is the full wets. That's probably not that far from the truth. Up through Raidillon and Eau Rouge then. Capital 58, does he have a move around the left-hand side? Houdini looks like he's going to really not do much to defend that position. Capital 58, I think, had much better speed going up through Arouge then, and he's taken that position rather easily, it has to be said. Adaltonian's kind of checking into this battle as well, not necessarily pushing as hard as he can. He's actually stayed stagnant, started 10th, currently 10th for the Red Bull driver, but he has avoided the carnage, and I suppose that is definitely what he wanted to do. I'd say it's a very viable strategy at Spa nonetheless, no matter the weather, especially today. Posh Josh looking to close in here on Bobbert Yates. It looks like Yates has actually either fallen behind of Helgelin or has not really improved that much because Josh has caught up to him here. This is going to be a really interesting thing here because how much pressure is Bobbert Yates going to be able to handle? He's wanting to catch up to the car ahead of him, but he now has a very reasonable source of attack coming from behind. We'll have to wait and see. It looks like we get a yellow flag towards the back. That's a couple cars caught up there, and by a couple, I mean only JCast. Cars were going through that section of the track, and JCast did lose it. Now fighting with Josh Sr., and I think... interesting there, I'm not quite sure. Matt Rosie with the fastest lap. Bit of a gap forming here between the two at the top of the podium, and VTEC in third. VTEC 6 seconds behind Matt Rosie, but as you can see, this is quite interesting here. The rain definitely getting lighter. Could we see perhaps time for the intermediates coming up here within a few laps? It certainly looks possible, and it's definitely happening. Nicky64 looks like he's hit the inside wall coming out of La Source, and he's missing the right front end plate on the front wing of his Aston Martin. Not something that he needed whatsoever. Now a net loss of 1 position. I think he was about 4th as well when that happened. That's not ideal for him, to say the least. Here's Posh Josh now. Does he perhaps have anything for Bobbert Yates ahead? It'll be interesting to see. Oh, that was a big slide from Yates. Yes, he does. And this was the pressure that I was talking about with Bobbert Yates. He was trying to hunt down Helgelin, and I'm afraid perhaps he maybe looked in the rearview mirror a second too long, and that's exactly what's happened. He's forfeited that position to Posh Josh, although good news for him, he's been able to hold on to the car in the process. The second close call of the day for the Williams team, won by each driver, really. And now it looks like Posh Josh starting to make some trouble here for Helgelin. He was about 1.5 seconds behind. Once he got around Yates, it looks as if now he's within half a second on the Haas ahead. Josh Sr. and Adaltonian battling for 11th this battle within 0.3 of a second. Adaltonian a little bit slow going through the first corner of campus there as they enter Stavolo now. Well, it looks like Helgelin starting to catch up on VTEC here. But that'll be interesting. Here's Josh Sr. still trying to find something around Adaltonian. We're going to look back along with that one in a bit. Nicky64 way off to the inside, letting Capital 58 through. And now a 3-car battle for this 3rd spot. But the question remains, at what point do we see drivers come in for the intermediates? Because the track eventually will turn to dry, at least temporarily. We are expecting rain once again at the end of the session. I think we're going to see Nicky64 come in here for said intermediate tires, at least perhaps to fix his front wing. As we do have a yellow flag, that's Josh Sr. He's lost it, coming out of the bus stop chicane, off to the right in front of the flag stand, actually. And that is going to be a safety car. Not ideal situation for him. Yeah, and I'm afraid that's going to be a safety car all day long. He's lost the car. PWR Grim Reaper on his way in. The rain definitely getting lighter, as you can see, but it's still coming down. T-Brum here is going to have a big decision to make. Does he come in for intermediates? And speaking of intermediates, Nicky60... Oh, goodness gracious, did you see that? Jordan was beginning to queue up behind the safety car. He nearly ran into the back of it. Nicky64 had to take evasive action. And somehow, some way, Nicky64 has actually just overtaken Jordan there. I'm not rightly sure what's happened. We've almost had an absolute conundrum. That one, definitely got close, but we've seen Nicky64 come in for intermediates. We've seen Grim Reaper do just the same. Everybody else remains on the wets. What does T-Brum do here? We're going to stick along to see at least who does what. and then I'll step aside to let the safety car do its thing, but this is going to be a big question. And all the while, once we're under safety car even longer, that'll have more time for the diverse weather effects of this session. Remember, it's going to start drying up here within, I'd say, probably the next 10 laps, and then it's supposed to retransition back into heavy rain. So, I mean, this one has the makings of a Division 2 classic, and I'm really hoping that that's the case. Let's see what T-Brum does. T-Brum goes in, Rosie will follow. VTEC a little bit far behind to make that decision, it has to be said. T-Brum into the pits. This is going to be, it has to be said, this is a very difficult pit lane in the dry. Let's hope nobody clobbers a wall on their way in. That's, absolutely, it's definitely possible. I'll give it that much. It's probably the dumbest pit lane entry in Formula 1, but Matt Rosie on his way out. Looks like T-Brum did have a better stop. He'll get out before him. VTEC on his way in. Helgeland on his way in. The Red Bull and the Ferrari getting a little mix up there, and that would have been quite the incident in real life if that was the case. Full wets going back on for Bobbert Yates. Has to be said, that's a mistake if you ask me. Adaltonian on the intermediates. I don't think Bobbert Yates meant to go back to the full wets. You can see everybody around him on the intermediates. That doesn't seem like something he intended to do there, that part's for sure. Looks like we've got cars making some repairs possibly here. Looks like JCast's going to come out ahead of Hightower. Jorday off towards the back. Grim Reaper's already made that stop. And as the safety car gathers itself here, I will step aside for now. So it looks like safety car on its way in now. I do want to point out that the everlasting battle between driver and his engineer has taken place once again as we expected. A bit of a mistake from the man on the microphone behind Bobbert Yates' pit decision. He's on intermediates. He's pit again under the safety car. So, interesting battle this is going to be. Matt Rosie versus T-Brum. These two drivers have, I don't want to say challenging each other really, minus the start. VTEC, however, will have a great opportunity to once again get himself back into this fight for the podium positions. He was 10 seconds behind when the safety car came out to begin with. Ariel T-Brum coming through the bus stop chicane now, off and running here once more in Spa, as it looks like he's gotten quite a large jump on Matt Rosie there, it has to be said. Already almost a second of gap as they head into La Source. Hopefully nobody decides to be ridiculous here and we see some sort of major incident, as it looks like behind we've got the Haas of Hightower. Looks like he perhaps could have made a move on Jorday. Hard to tell. Very interesting time this is. The transition period between the full wets and the intermediates. Very hard to tell. Matt Rosie seems to be, at the moment, perhaps struggling with said intermediate tires. He's already nearly a second and a half behind. There's Posh Josh around the outside of Helgeland before they even reach Lacombe there. Great move from the Ferrari driver, which I believe this is his Division 2 debut as well. I could be wrong about that, but either way, you got noticed. Very nice. Capital 58 and Jorday here side by side through Lacombe. There's no way. Once more, and it looks like Jorday, and now Bobbert Yates are on the outside. That's some contact there. Thankfully, Capital 58 was able to hold on to the car, although I'm not sure he's going to be too pleased with that one there. It didn't look like Bobbert Yates tried to hit him. It just kind of looked like perhaps some oversteering. That's kind of what happens sometimes, it has to be said. Adaltonian, out in the moment, up 2 positions since his original starting spot of 10th. He's got Nicky 64 ahead of him, which we've seen time and time again as Bobbert Yates getting into the back of Hightower there. That is a lot of bumping from Bobbert Yates. He's going to try it around the outside now. That has to be said. It did not look as clean as it should have been, and thankfully nobody's suffered from that. That was quite some argy-bargy happening there. God, it sounds weird as an American to say that. Anyways, looks like Capital 58 getting overtaken by Jorday there. I'm actually more interested in how this battle's going to turn out, to be honest. There's Jorday down to the inside on Hightower, wheel to wheel, and this may happen going through Blanchimont. I've had quite a lot of fun with a certain Australian named HSVDT through that specific corner in the F2 seasons a while back. Hope you're doing well, HS. Anyway, it's Vicky64. Can he perhaps find something up for Houdini here heading into La Source? He kind of had a peek down to the inside, didn't fully commit to it. He may get him on exit of the corner, though. It doesn't look like Houdini's gotten away well enough to put up a formidable gap back to the Aston Martin, and it seems here that Nicky64 might have an opportunity. Downshifting through Eau Rouge. Oh, and I tell you what, I don't think Houdini did, and Houdini looks as if he's gotten away well. Posh Josh in pursuit of VTech now, and by in pursuit, he does seem to be kind of falling behind him a little bit, doesn't it? Well, I say that, he's suddenly caught up another 2/10, so somewhere along those lines, VTech has made a mistake. And speaking of that, Posh Josh may force him into another one here. Now that's pretty much how Posh Josh overtook Bobber Yates earlier on, was that you pressure somebody long enough in the wet conditions, they're probably going to make a mistake. And I think that may be what's happening here. Posh Josh within 0.2 of a second of VTech, looking for that third podium spot here in the 9th lap of the Grand Prix. VTech had to take the corner slow, didn't really get to stay on the throttle. He blocked off his overtake attempt as well. And now this two-car battle for the podium here really starting to heat up. We've got Helgelin kind of peeking in from a little bit farther behind, it has to be said. But 0.2 of a second here. Posh Josh is all over the gearbox of the Red Bull ahead. Hopefully this one ends well. Still within the slipstream. He's not really going to get an opportunity to overtake him, I'd say, until they get perhaps through the bus stop into La Source. They typically don't see many overtaking opportunities into the bus stop. It's just not ideal. That apex of the corner, the car on the outside has to really turn through you, and by that point, you're probably going to be chopped in half. Sebrum sets the fastest lap, then followed by Matt Rosie, and it looks as if the rain perhaps beginning to stop here. It certainly has that effect. Could we see the rain beginning to stop soon? Maybe not far off. Nicky64 pressuring Houdini here. Heading into La Source, he's got Adel Tonian close behind, who also wants in on this. Villeneuve in the Ferrari is a little bit further behind, I'll say, but should one of these cars make a mistake, he'll still be in prime position to overtake. Meanwhile, at the top of Radion, it looks as if Posh Josh, Nicky64, 0.2 of a second away from Houdini here. Adel Tonian watching along, as now I can confirm the rain has stopped falling. Into Lacombe they go. Houdini had the inside line, or at least the preferred line going through the corner. Nicky64 was not able to make the overtake happen. Adel Tonian still in pursuit. Further up the grid, Posh Josh still doing his best to try and chop down the trees of VTech here. VTech, it has to be said, all credit to him, he's put up some excellent defensive maneuvers here, but how long will it last? Nicky64, 3-second time penalties. Looks like Bobber Yates getting around JCast there. Not quite sure. JCast seemed to have had a little bit of a slip going through No Name. Bobber Yates was able to get around him down the inside, I believe it was. That brain only... I gotta say, in doing this commentary job long enough, my brain really only works in about 15-second increments. But, you know, all in a day's work. Once again, the... really is the sky clearing up now. Once again, I do have to say this, we are expecting rain yet again at the end of the session, so while it may be dry now, how long does it stay that way, and does it stay that way long enough to where we could perhaps see a set of dry tires be put on? That's the part I'm not so sure about. The rain may come again. We're not sure. It's going to be towards the back end of the session. We have had a safety car. Nicky64 choosing to come in. This will be interesting here. Has he gone in too early? I think, honestly, he has, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm assuming he's going to be putting on either the softs or the mediums, considering we do have the rain coming again. We'll have to see. What does the crew put on for him? It's going to be mediums. They'll be falling back quite far now, and it has to be said, I really don't think it's dry enough for the dry tires yet. I think he's gone way too early. But anyways, Adel Tonian within 3.5 of Houdini ahead. He's been in well-hot pursuit, and I'm afraid Nicky64 has just proved me correct there. He spun it coming out of the pit lane. Mind you, the tires are still cold, I'll give him that. But still, I don't think he's helped his case any whatsoever. Adel Tonian doing his best, still trying to keep on to the back of Houdini here for that 6th spot. Looks like ahead, Posh Josh still doing his best to pressure VTech. VTech has done an excellent job. I'm surprised Posh Josh hasn't gotten around him to overtake yet. So it has to be said, I think... See, it still looks wet in this section of the track, doesn't it? It looked much more dry going through Sector 2, but towards the tail end of it, it really seems like the track is still wet. It's hard to tell, but the race control hasn't enabled DRS yet, so that means the game is still telling us that there's enough water on the track to where intermediate's probably the best decision. As T-Brum goes fastest again, 1:53.743, and I'm afraid Matt Rossi really starting to fall behind. 2.7 the gap is now, and it hasn't really come down much. Adeltonian choosing to come in. Oh, and he's hit the wall. That's not ideal. Villeneuve coming in, Yates coming in. I think Yates has had an even bigger shunt through the wall there than Adeltonian. But again, have they come in perhaps just a lap early? What tires did Adeltonian just put on? I believe, are they the softs? Well, I can't tell. This camera angle is absolutely atrocious. I'm assuming mediums. Mediums they are for Adeltonian. Mediums for Villeneuve. And now we can see, I think now, no, I think they've absolutely timed it perfectly here. You can see the track still looks dry. It's really looking dry now. But again, as I said, Sector 1 definitely looking more dry than the rest of the back end of Sector 2 and beyond. Yellow flag, it's PWR Grim Reaper. He spun it coming out of the pit lane. Oh, hold it together, lad. There you go. So, track we can call dry. T-Brum scheduled to come in this lap, as well as Matt Rossi, as well as VTech, as well as Josh, as well as Helgelin, as well as Houdini, as well as JCast. There's DRS, by the way, as well as Jorday, and as well as Hightower. Adeltonian, 5-ish seconds behind Hightower. Oh, I meant to look at the... actually, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into my watch, and I'm just going to time... I'm just gonna... Oh, for God's sakes. Okay. Matt Rossi in. I've got the timer going on my watch now. I'd like to see how long the pit actually is. In goes Rossi. T-Brum on his way out. Coming through. Well, I timed it before he got to the line, so from the pit entry line to coming out of the pit lane is 24 seconds roughly. And by out of the pit lane, I mean out of even the rejoin the circuits as well. It looks as if JCast and Jorday have not decided to pit. Bold maneuver there, but I think unfortunately for the neutral viewer, the top four has stayed the same. But with DRS in play, that might lead us to a lot of fun. Adeltonian, 7 seconds behind. So it looks like he'll be bumped up to at least 5th once JCast and Jorday come in. I don't really know how well the tire physics are compared to real life, but you do know that after, when the intermediates are in play and that layer of grooved tire wears off, it becomes really a super soft tire. I don't know if that translates into the game, but it has to be said, Adeltonian is really catching him, so I'm going to say no. God, that would have been interesting, though. Oh, but then look at this! The rain is coming again! You can see the drops on Posh Josh's screen. There ain't no way. Everybody decided to pit for what was essentially one lap of dry conditions, and now JCast and Jorday look like they've just gone from 0 IQ to about 300 IQ because now they can stay out throughout the end of this dry session, get back under their intermediates, wait for everybody else ahead of them to pit. By God almighty, JCast and Jorday might be battling for the win come the end of the session. My God almighty. That was incredible, and I didn't... So, again, we knew it was going to go from wet to dry to wet. We didn't know at what point it became wet again. And I think we've just found out one whole lap on the medium tires have been completed. for those that pit, we have had 2 laps of dry track weather, and as you can see now, it is beginning to puddle even more, and it's going to get even more full wet once again. So this is going to be interesting. Does JCast and Jorday pit for the full wets, because it is supposed to be coming down in the droves once again. Oh my goodness, we've just witnessed L Plan is in effect, perhaps. Oh my god, this is absolutely incredible. And now, the rest of the drivers on the mediums. I mean, here's Posh Josh. He's starting to get the purple, though. As you can see, VTech really starting to lay off the throttle, because as you can tell, the track is getting wet. Let's see, give or take 24 seconds. Adaltonian has just gotten around Jorday. That has to be said, not really what I wanted to see. Really pulling for these guys that stuck it out on the intermediate. Remember, those tires will go from 11 to 15 laps. DRS disabled now. So, 11 to 15, 8 laps old now. So they have to go 16 laps on the intermediates. T-Brum on his way in. Rosie in behind. VTech, it has to be said, I think we're going to expect him coming in, as well as Posh Josh. JCast, however, I think has absolutely stuck the nail on the head. And I think he's going to be taking the lead of this Grand Prix. Oh, but this is interesting here. VTech and Posh Josh haven't come in. Oh, and they've thought they could stick it out for one more lap. Look at these two, nearly side by side for the lead of the Grand Prix. It's a mix-up getting into the pits. I believe we've got a driver that's gone around. It's towards the back. I think it's Jorday. It is, as everyone else scrambles behind to get in for the wet tires once again. It's VTech and Posh Josh battling it out on the dry tires still. As you can see, we are starting to collect water on the track once again. These two battling for the lead of a Grand Prix, which I'm not even sure they're going to be able to keep. Well, they definitely won't. They're going to have to pit for the intermediates. But still, brilliant stuff this. I can't believe it. Just like I can't believe it's not butter. Anyways. Once again, look at the tires. Here's Posh Josh right up against the gearbox of VTech here. Oh, look at Posh Josh. He's using all the curb he can. A bit bold. That curb's not going to have nearly as much grip. Into Puon. They go side by side. There ain't no way, lad. And I think VTech either has gone wide or there was contact made. Couldn't really tell from the camera angle provided. It doesn't look like Posh Josh had done much to bump him out of the way. Perhaps I'd have to assume if you made contact through there, you'd probably go spinning. So we're going to have to assume VTech probably just kind of let the car slide on his own. Tough call. T-Brum is going to be taking the lead of this Grand Prix. JCast, unfortunately for him, was not able, as you see here, Matt Rosie going around JCast there. Matt Rosie up to 4th. See how this goes. Posh Josh on his way in. I tell you what, I'm very, very impressed by their lack of hitting the wall in the wet conditions on dry tires in the Spa pit lane. That has to be said, one of the more incredible things I've seen so far today. JCast has taken 3rd position. VTech in, Adaltonian in as well. Houdini coming in. It looks like the rain stopped there for a second. I was about to say, there ain't no way. Posh Josh looks like he's going to come out in 4th here. He's going to separate. It looks like Capital 58 has stayed out another lap on the mediums. That's a bit bold. Hightower coming in as well. And once again, we are back to the wet conditions. How long will it take to get the tires up to temperature? JCast, I think, really could have just finessed himself a podium here if the result holds. A brilliant use of chicanery by JCast if he's able to hold on for 3rd. Posh Josh, 9.5 seconds behind, but it has to be said, is closing fast, considering as well JCast 10 lap old, intermediate tires. Posh Josh is on freshies as well. So many different things in this Grand Prix, and don't forget, the rain is supposed to get heavier as well, and we're gonna have 6 laps of racing this next time by. Can you believe it? My God, I mean, sometimes you just can't make this stuff up. You really can't. Here's Jorday. He's going to have to get around Capital 58 here, and I think Capital 58, I'll give him a right good effort from the lad, but he stayed out way too long. And Adolf, that's actually VTech now, in pursuit of the Alpine ahead. Helgeland behind, getting around Capital 58 as well. VTech went from battling with Posh Josh for third to now battling with Jorday for fifth. Slight bit of downgrade there, if I say so myself, but it has to be said. Everyone else, oh, that's not good. That's Capital 58, and he's gone around, and oh, this isn't good for him either. He's got to really get back on the throttle and get that car moving. You don't want to be disqualified for sitting for sitting still. Thankfully, he did get the car up and going again. It didn't look like he hit anything either, so that's good news there. VTech, 0.3 of a second on Jorday. Oh, he had quite the peak down the inside there. Didn't choose to commit to an overtake. But this is the interesting thing here. Remember last lap I was saying that Posh Josh was starting to catch up to JCast? Well, that was at a gap of 9.5 seconds. He's now at 6.5. So, if you're JCast, that's quite alarming. But I think if you're JCast, if you're able to walk away with a 4th place here, I mean, that's ridiculously incredible, and I think he ought to be proud of himself. Nicky 64 with it in pursuit here of Houdini. Mind you, he's got a 3-second penalty, as well as Villeneuve as well. Down to the inside looks Nicky 64. That's a bit gutsy, and I think he even realized it too. Decided to back off there before he could do any damage. 0.5 of a second. From Helgeland to Jorday. T-Brum, it has to be said, has done everything he can. He's really had this race, I don't want to say all to himself, but that's certainly what it seemed like. Adoltonian at the moment's got the fastest lap. He's within the top 10. I think it should count as well. Helgeland within 0.5 of a second on the Alpine ahead. Jorday was one of those drivers that stayed out on the intermediate through the dry period, and unfortunately for him, I think he caught some oversteer exiting Stavolo, and that ended his chance for what I really considered a good effort for the podium. Now in 6th, he's up 7 spots though, so good on him for improving upon his day, but I think minus that mistake, he could have been in for a lot more. But still, you got to take your wins where you get them, and I think that's what he's going to do. But as you can see, it does look as if the rain's getting heavier. And speaking of getting heavier, Nicky 64 really went for that one there on Houdini. Lots of oversteer off the curb there. It's actually a brilliant save from Nicky 64 in order to hold on to that car. But yeah, I'm afraid that one nearly went catastrophic. Here's something I hope doesn't go catastrophic. It's Helgeland on Jorday. Jorday is at his last grasp of battery life here. Down to the inside goes Helgeland, and I think he'll be having that spot right easily as they go in through Lacombe here. Oh, that's a lot of contact, and by God, if commentary curse wasn't a thing before this, it is now, as Bobbert Yates is actually going to pick up 2 spots. Helgeland and Jorday went side by side through Lacombe, and I think, did Jorday make contact first, or did Helgeland spin the car? Very tough to say, but nonetheless, both of them are going to be unhappy regarding that one, as now Bobbert Yates has the 6th spot. A driver which we've seen make a few mistakes today. Back up to 6th. He's improved his positioning by 5. I tell you what, this Williams team is going to be quite happy with how their days turned out. I think Matt Rosie might just say he wish he could have had more, but he's done all he can do, really. T-Brum has just absolutely sent the field packing, and assuming he does hold on to this win, he's going to fully deserve it today. He's 64, 0.8 of a second behind Houdini. That battle's not really getting any closer. Speaking of not really getting closer, really getting closer, Posh Josh back to JCast. It's going to be the move for the podium, and again, even if JCast doesn't end up getting the podium here, he ought to be right pleased with himself. It'll be a 4th place finish. But I tell you what, there's no quit in this guy. We might just see him hold out for the podium here. You never know. Posh Josh subbing up this week from, I believe, Division 3. Well, it has to be Division 3. He's doing one damn good job as well. 0.3 of a second. I don't think JCast has gotten a right good move going through Radion anyways. But Posh Josh is still too far back to make anything happen. I think that's what JCast may rely on, unless Posh Josh tries to get gutsy here and make the move before it comes naturally into Brussels, no less, on the brakes. No slipping and sliding there, Posh Josh. It's a brilliant move, and he picks up the podium spot here. JCast, hats off to him. He's done all he can do, and if he does come away with 4th place, it was a brilliant effort. He's got VTech 9 seconds-ish behind him. Remember, VTech's on fresh rubber as well, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And in fact, he is really starting to chew up that time to JCast. Nikki 64 nearly within a second of Houdini ahead. The field's starting to get spread out now, it has to be said. Really greasy surface it looks. I mean, you can see, I don't know if we're actually going to see another round of full wets. But it does have to be said, the rain is coming down. The track isn't getting any drier naturally. It's going to be, what, 3 laps to go? Yeah, 3 laps to go now. I have to say, as much as the rain is, pun intended, I don't want to say it's dampened things, aside from the track. But I tell you what, I think if we had dry for just a little bit longer, we would have seen an absolutely unbelievable Grand Prix. Despite the rain, despite the tricky conditions, it really is a testament to the Division 2 grid. It's been an exciting race all night long, and I think that is something that we really have to look forward to here. CPI T-Brum's not got much far left. Only 2.5 laps after this. CPI T-Brum, I believe this will be his first, it will be his first race win of the season as well here in Division 2. He did win Mexico last season. Can I just confirm this? Has he not won at Belgium before? Well, yeah, it has to be said. This will be the, should the result hold, we'll be looking at 5 different winners in 5 Division 2 Grand Prix here at Belgium. I don't think I've been along for all of them, but the ones I have been along for have been absolutely amazing. As well as, honestly, I don't think I can remember a bad race casting Division 2. I really can't. Not one. And it goes to say, again, I really do think Division 2 is the best division in the league for entertainment value. Everybody trying to prove that they belong in the division, in Division 1. Everybody so hungry, looking for everything they've got. Always trying to get the best out of their competitors. And it shows week in and week out. And just in case you didn't believe me, when I say that, we are looking for our 8th different winner in 9 races this season. That is a statistic. It's absolutely incredible. And speaking of, well, not speaking of anything, here's Villeneuve. Looking for it on Jorday. Hightower's just picked up 3 seconds. Oh, I tell you what, Villeneuve's, I think, gotten away much better through Radion then. Compared to the car ahead of him. Oh, that was nearly an accident there. I think Villeneuve managed to get around Jorday here. But my goodness, that was almost quite the slip and fall. Meanwhile, VTech has about cut the deficit to JCast in half. It was about 6 seconds. Oh no, Posh Josh has picked up 3 seconds of time penalty. Well, JCast is 7.5 seconds-ish behind him. Yeah. And VTech starting to close the gap on JCast here. Mind you, there's only 1 more lap to go. After this one is T-Brum making his way through the bus stop chicane for the penultimate time. Final lap of the Grand Prix underway. VTech really starting to close it in on JCast. I believe the gap was about 9 seconds. And mind you, again, JCast is on the older tires by some margin as well. Can we just confirm how much? 15 laps to 5 laps. So for him to... It has to be said, he's had a brilliant handle on the tires as well, despite how many stops he's made. Not how many stops he's made, by how old his tires are. Final lap of the Grand Prix underway here. VTech now within almost... Well, he's within 2 seconds of the car ahead. We'll have to see if JCast perhaps does he make a mistake and wind up dropping down to 5th. We'll have to wait and see. VTech a little hesitant getting on the throttle there coming out of La Source. Up through Rouge, looks all safe. I think this Kemmel Straight is really going to be the best opportunity for someone to make an overtake, so for VTech to still be a second and a half down, I think, knock on wood, we can see JCast getting that 4th spot and holding on to it. As Tebrum making his way through campus now, as Jorday has left the session. He had a couple of problems with that, I believe, during the qualifying session. Or suddenly, it's under a second for the 4th spot between VTech and JCast. JCast, all he's got to do is hold on here and pray that VTech makes a mistake behind him, which I think really he's gotten a much better exit of the no-name corner. We will check in with that in just a minute's time. But it has to be said, Ariel Tebrum has really had this one all to himself all day long. The weather really hasn't picked up much of a factor for him as he goes through the bus stop chicane now. It will be Ariel Tebrum, the 8th different winner in 9 Grand Prix here in Division 2. He will win the Belgian Grand Prix. Matt Rosie 2nd, Posh Josh eventually 3rd, but now this is the battle here. 2 cars both battling for this 4th spot. Looks like the rain is getting much heavier now towards the back end of the session. It's going to be all heading into that bus stop chicane. JCast has done so well to hold on to the car, despite how old his tires are. It looks like he's going to choose the inside line as well. This one will be interesting here. VTech's going to... I think he's going to have the preferred line in the final corner. Does he hold on to it, VTech? Yes, he does. The final corner on the final lap. VTech takes home 4th. Hats off to JCast for the effort that he put in. So heartbreaking for him to see him not get that 4th spot. Posh Josh, by the way, great Grand Prix for him. He'll finish 3rd. Looks like Nikki 64 and Houdini battling it out there. Yes, they are. Nikki 64 will get out ahead of the Mercedes. Of course, not going to mean much. Well, I hate to say it there. Capital 58 has really just gotten into the back of Hightower then. That's not really an ideal way to see that overtake happen, it has to be said. Into the final corner. Please, nothing malicious here. Yeah. Thankfully not. So at the end of an action-packed day here in Division 2, as it turns out, the game just doesn't want to do that. Oh, it's migrating host. That's good news. Just what we needed. Anyways, Ariel Tebrum taking the win. Matt Rosie 2nd. Posh Josh in 3rd. VTech 4th. Making that position in the final corner. JCast 5th. Bobber Yates 6th. Helgeland 7th. 8th Villeneuve. 9th Jorday. 10th Adeltonian. 11th Houdini. 12th Nikki 64. 13th Grim Reaper. 14th Capital 58. 15th Hightower. 16th Josh Sr., unfortunately not finishing the Grand Prix. Well, if you thought that one was action-packed, we're heading to Hungary next week for round 10. Should be a fun one. Hotspot, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.